I was greeted by my host in Ocate, New Mexico, with a full vegetarian meal. It was incredible. She has her own greenhouse, uh, an extensive greenhouse, totally underground. She's an activist uh, fighting big corporations that are trying to destroy her company, and she's agreed to answer the three dream questions.
Um, the first question is, what are your hopes? What are your dreams?
Oh, how do I go blank at a time like this? I don't tend to think in terms of hope. I think in terms of trust, which seems to carry a little bit more power to it, and action. I trust that I will be able to realize what I put into action. My dreams are to complete my book. But it's not really a dream, it's an intention. So I think in terms of intentions and things that motivate me that are fueled by passion and curiosity. And so writing is one of those. I intend to finish restoring my land. And so they're very private kind of dreams.
More personal than
More personal than altruistic. Although my book has some altruistic aspects to it because it's about personal achievement of falling in love with oneself and healing oneself through modalities that are life-giving rather than life-taking.
So if we were talking about your book and the reason behind your book is finishing the book is a dream. Is the process of going through the book or the book itself and have a relationship to some broader dream?
Well, I think in general, we're here for a spiritual journey. It's not so much a physical body journey, but a spiritual journey. And that journey requires an alignment, and it requires falling in love with oneself, so that once we fall in love with ourselves, we can bring that inner gift of ourselves outwardly to the world, which ultimately would bring about peace. If we all fell in love with ourselves, we would be walking and acting with purpose of peacefulness and compassion and forgiveness.
So where does this idea of peace or falling in love with oneself, where does that come from?
I think it comes from living life. And
where did it come from for you?
It comes from living life that has had adversities and all the trials and tribulations that we all understand, and recognizing that there is a path that can bring about an inner calm and remove the fear. And the fear, to me, is what keeps us from being happy and being in love with ourselves and other people. So if we're driven by fear and we're driven by insecurities, then we can't, we continue to live in a life of chaos and uncertainty. I prefer to live in a life of chaos and uncertainty that is framed in love rather than framed in fear. And since we can't control anything other than ourselves, I like to embody a self-discipline that can allow me to pull together the balance in my life that allows me to go inward and seek that goddess within, or the God within, depending upon the gender. And then when we recognize that we are divine, that we can achieve tremendous joy in our life. And when we achieve tremendous joy in our life, we can bring our raison d'etre forward and our purpose, and we can truly, one by one, change the world.
So that's beautiful. I'm wondering about, you talked about a life full of trials and tribulations or trials and adversity, and that's a way of attaining love for ourselves. Has having love for yourself always been you're a dreamer. Can you remember some of your dreams from your early childhood and some of the goals that you might have had before?
Well, I think like everyone, we want to be happy. We just can't achieve happiness on a straight line. It's a series of waves. So through consciousness, as long as we are conscious, we can understand that wave pattern, and we can predict it and determine what enters into that wave, the degree of extremes. I don't really recall anything specific about what brought me to this place, other than I always wanted to be wise, because I saw a lot of adults that didn't appear to be very wise when I was young. And I thought, wow, I don't want them ruling my life. I don't want them determining my life. I seem to be able to find my own passion and my own drive. And
what do you
I'd like
mean
to
by
that.
wisdom?
Well, I think that's balance. Today, in my adult life, wisdom is balance. It's balance in the physical, the mental, emotional, spiritual. So,
But you recognize that maybe even in adults, that imbalance, early on in your life, you recognize that in the adults around you somewhat.
yes, I saw that in the chaos. I saw that in their fear. I felt the energy. I think as an empath from the time I was very young, I could definitely experience that energetic dissonance, and that energetic dissonance impacted me, and I didn't like that. And today I like it even less. So I like to seek people who are able to find that harmonious resonance within themselves. And I'm drawn to that.
And that would be being in love with yourself.
Yes. And I think everyone can identify with that. When we fall in love with someone else, we tend to project all of those wonderful characteristics of ourselves onto the person that represents our love object. And that, when we don't own them as part of ourselves, we give those up, and then we become addicted to that person because that person represents all those things that we admire and desire. But when we actually own those qualities, those aspects of ourself, we can literally fall in love with ourself and have the same emotional high with ourself energetically as with someone we project those onto. So everyone's capable of that, and that's a beautiful experience.
I'm going to ask the third question, and that would be advice or counsel to people who are just starting out in life or beginning new chapters in their life, whatever their age, but maybe specifically the youth, young people.
I think it's very important to recognize that we all have a purpose and that we all have tremendous gifts. As a palm reader, I see that in people when I look at their palm. A lot of times people don't recognize that in themselves. So my advice would be to feel their passion and embrace it, and tether 3-4 different aspects of passion in their life. Tether themselves to that, so that when they're going through all the changes in life, all the trials and tribulations, the adversities that human beings experience, it's universal. They can always come back to those passions, and that will drive them and hold them sway.
You're talking about tethering to passions. An example, perhaps.
An example might be playing the violin or the cello, or playing the guitar, or running, or their love of gardening or beekeeping, or it might be deep conversation, philosophical conversation with friends. It might be in solitude carving ceremonial rattles, or it might be bicycling somewhere. But to give up one's passions is akin to cutting one's jugular. And we have to stay connected truly to ourselves, because it's through those passions that we can connect with our inner self, our inner God, our inner goddess.
So what I'm hearing is that as we go through life, maybe this quest for self-love that probably doesn't really end ever, but we need some safe places, and those passions can be those places.
They fuel us. They give us the reason to wake up in the morning with gratitude. They give us the reason to smile and to engage with ourselves and others. And relationship is everything. And when we have to start with that relationship with ourselves, And when we can nurture and nourish that inner relationship, then we really truly have something to offer the world.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Not a thing.
Okay. Bless you.